Hello and welcome to InSource's Integrated Risk Management Demo. My name is Joshua Garrison and I will be guiding you along today. So first off, I just want to start with the agenda. We're going to do a quick solution overview, a little bit of information about InSource itself. I'll get right into the demo and we can talk about next steps. So this is InSource's board of portfolio. So you can see across the top there we have a lot of different accounts under different modules of ServiceNow. Today we're specifically talking about integrated risk management. So there on the right you can see we've worked with a wide range of companies, anywhere from tax software companies, university medical centers, big financial retirement accounts of Vanguard, some other banks, as well as some federal contractors. And of course you cannot forget about Hershey Chocolate. This slide here shows both our security operations and our integrated risk management inside of ServiceNow. So there on the right you can see all of the integrated risk management modules. So you can see we have IT and operational risk management, audit and compliance management. Also on that side, you have third-party risk management and business continuity management. And then on the left side, you can see that's all of the security operation modules inside of ServiceNow. So we have vulnerability and security incident response. And the reason we like to pull this up and show clients this is, if you think of this as one big analogy of a cork board, you can take a string of yarn and tie it from one of these modules to all the other different modules, and it'd be a big spider web of lines across your screen. It's because all of these modules interface with each other, so all of them in one capacity or another provide or feed information to the other to give you better information and a better overall picture of your security and integrated risk management across your entire business. There at the bottom you can see we have the Now platform. So this is what the entire platform is built off of. So these are used inside of every single one of the modules you see above. So the CMDB, that's your configuration management database. So all your configuration items, so your computers, your desktops, your laptops, your servers, your locations, anything that you want to tie a risk to or tie a security incident to or tie a policy to or build an audit off of, it's going to live inside of your CMDB. So we'll work with you to kind of build that out. Performance analytics, this is what you build all your KPI metrics and your data and visualization reports off of, is the performance analytics part of the platform. Third-party integration, we'll talk about that here more in just a little bit, but ServiceNow builds has built out a lot of third-party integrations to other software companies. And then your workflow and automation and orchestration, so all your automation and your automation of task and generation of task and all that good stuff is built on top of the workflow and flow designer inside of ServiceNow. All right, your integration. So these are just some of the integrated risk management integrations that ServiceNow has. Like I said, they've built a lot of them out, and we have some of the bigger ones we've worked with on here. So UCF is one we've implemented with a lot of customers with, the NIST RMF, and then there at the top you can see some third-party integrations, so BitSight and security scorecard, so bringing over some vendor risk scoring from other software. Like I said, these are all pre-built inside of ServiceNow. It's just a matter of connecting and some small configurations. And if you guys have specific integrations that you guys need to implement and configure inside of ServiceNow, that is something we will talk more about and can build out for you. All right, so let's get into the demo. Alright, so once you log into the instance, you'll see a home page. So currently right now my home page is the compliance workspace, which we'll talk about here in just a second. That home page is customizable per user. If they click on their initials here in the upper right, you'll see preferences, and you'll have a couple different tabs here of different user preferences that the user can set. And these are specific on an individual user level. But if you come down here to user experience, you can see your current start page. So you can set that as use default. You can go to the dashboards page. You can go to the page where I'm on now, or continue where I last left off. So the users have a couple different options here. We can also set this based on logged in users. So if you as a business want specific users to go to a certain page upon login, we can make sure we set that at a global level as well. Some of the other different options here, you can see there's a couple different display options here. Some theme options, so we can go to a dark view versus the regular default view. Some different accessibility preferences. Some notification preferences, so users can turn off specific notifications for themselves. Some workspace preferences, and then the language and region, so they can change the date and time format and the time zone that they are working in or that they want to use. Continuing along with some of the top ribbon up here, I'm going to come all the way here to the far left. So this is I call it the home button. Usually we put, the company's logo here, but when you click this will take you back to your home page. Like I said, my home page right now is the compliance workspace. And then you have a couple different options here. So this is your all menu, your favorites menu, and your history menu. So your all menu, this is all the different modules that the user has access to. I have admin level privileges here in this instance, so you can see I have quite a long laundry list of different modules and stuff I can click on. Just for instance, if I type in risk, you can see there's lots of different stuff that comes up with risk. So what we usually tell users is to set up your favorites. So on any of these items here, and I'll come back here, any of these items, if you hover over them, you can see there's a little star. And when you click this to add it to your favorites. And when you click that, you'll see it, you can rename it. So this is the employee center. So say we just want to name it employee center. And we hit done. If you come over here to your favorites tab, you can see that the employee center now is added on there. And you can add and change the colors of these by clicking on this little edit your favorites. You'll see this little menu come up, so you can change the names of them here. You can change the icons and also the location and the colors. So I can move these around as much as I want if I really wanted to. For right now, we'll leave it like that. Your history tab is exactly what it means. It's your history, so it's where you've been in the system. It'll tell you how long ago you were there, and I can click on this, for instance, and this will take me back to where I last was at. So it's very useful when you're going back and forth between a couple different forms or records in the system. Your workspaces, so again, I have admin level privileges in here, so I have a lot of different workspaces, but this is where you'll be able to access all those different workspaces, and we'll talk about those a little bit more in detail here in just a little bit. So you can see you'll have the audit workspace, the compliance workspace, and also the risk workspace. For right now, I'm going to go back to the compliance workspace, and we'll go to the home tab. All right, and over here on the right, you'll see there's a global search, so I can search for something specific here. So if I type in controls, for example, and hit enter, it'll show me everything inside of that compliance workspace that has the word controls, and you can see it breaks it down by incidents, users, knowledge, catalog items, anywhere where that word control comes up. So this is good if you're searching kind of general throughout the system. Up here on the top, you also have sidebar discussions. So the way I describe these is kind of like instant message inside of ServiceNow. So you can have different message threads with different agents or coworkers or analysts that you're working with. You'll see a help icon here. So this help icon will take you to ServiceNow product documentation page. And you have a notification bell here. So these are internal notifications. So it'll let you know like when an approval is approved, or if you have an approval waiting for your approval. Whenever like comments or work notes get updated on one of the items that you're working on within the system, they will also show up here. All right, for right now, I'm going to go back to the compliance workspace, and we will talk about the compliance management workspace. All right, so here on the compliance management workspace, you have a home tab. So on this home tab, you'll have some general overview reporting here. So you have some overview reporting on authority documents, policies, and entities. So entities are items or locations or departments that you are tying policies and controls and risks to. And we'll kind of talk about that a little bit more in detail, but that's what entities are. You can see there's some control assurance reporting, some tracking, so acknowledgement campaigns to specific policies, policy exceptions, and compliance cases that have been brought up. And that's about covers the home page. There's also a task pane over here on the far right. So these will show pending tasks that are assigned to me and then also assigned to my group. And these are all clickable, so you can click these and go right to that list view. That goes for any of the reports here. So if I click on this part of this pie graph here, you can see it'll take me right to a list view of those authority documents. There's also this create button here in the upper right. So this is kind of a quick action where you can create an authority document, citation, policy, control, objective, etc. All right, so over here on the left, you'll see a couple different tabs here. We're going to come down to this list tab here, and you can see that this is a different list views of different records inside the system. So we are going to open up the compliance library, and we're going to go to all policies, and we're going to open up a policy record. All right, so this pretty much goes for any record in a workspace. You'll have an overview tab, and then which kind of gives some overview reporting and the state of where the record is at. And then there is a details tab, and then multiple different related lists here. And these are all dependent on what type of record you open, but just about every record you open on the workspace will have an overview and a details tab. So the overview tab is exactly what it is, just an overview. So this is a description of the policy we clicked on, the state that it's in, so we can see that it's in published right now, and then a couple different status reports here on the policy. If we click on the details tab, you can see this is the name of the policy. This is the type of policy it is. So there's a couple different types of policies, so standards, guidelines, policies, a couple different types you can choose from here. And you can see the description of the policy and then the actual policy text. So this is what the actual policy reads as in here. The next section here is assignment. So you can see there's an owner, there's reviewer, and then you'll see approval method and approvers. So approval method, if you can see there's two different options here of select approvers and use approval rule. So if you do select approvers, what you'll do is you'll type in the names of the approvers that you want to approve this policy. Approval rules are rules that we set up for you during configuration. And what that entails is, say you always send policies to a specific group for approval. So we can set up an approval rule to send an approval to that group, and then after that group approves, maybe we go to a higher level manager approval before it is considered approved. So we can set up those different approval rules in a lot of different flavors, whatever works best for you and your business. I'm going to come back to the overview real quick here so I can kind of explain the life cycle of the policy. So when you first create the policy, it'll be in a draft phase. So this is where you're entering that description, you're entering the policy text itself, you're setting that owner and the owner group and the approvals and the reviewers. And then once you are ready for it to be reviewed, you'll click on a button up here in the upper right. It'll say review, and it'll send the review to the reviewers that you have selected. After they have reviewed it, it'll go to an awaiting approval state, and this is when those approvals will be fired off. Those approvals will send notifications to the users. So right here you can see that Alina approved this policy, and she can come in here and approve it like this. She'll also get a notification saying that this policy is waiting for her approval. All right, and then after it goes through one or however many approvals that we set up, it'll go to a published state. And it'll stay in this published state as long as it is active. You can see we do set the schedule, so we set the valid from and the valid to date for the specific policy. You can see there is a policy setup section here. So once the policy is approved, it'll go to a knowledge base internal to the business, and this is where all of your published policies will live inside of this governance, risk, and compliance knowledge base. And I'll show you guys that really quick. So if I go here to the all navigation filter and I go to knowledge, you'll see governance, risk, and compliance. When we click on that, you can see all those different policies that we have published. So for example, if I open up this policy right here, you can see who created it, when it was created by, and how many views that it has. You can also see the requirements. So this is the actual policy right here. There's a couple different configurations here. So like if it's helpful or not, if you want to rate the article, and the posting a comment, that's all configurable. We can turn that on and off. But that's where all of your policies live once you have them published. All right, I'm going to go back to the workspace, the compliance workspace. And the last thing I wanted to explain on here is I'm going to walk you down from authority document all the way down to individual controls. So you can see it kind of lays them out in order here, but we have authority documents, and then inside of authority documents we have citations, and inside of citations we have control objectives, and inside of those control objectives we have individual controls. And don't worry, I'm going to break it down for you, so hang in there. So from an authority document level, if I click on the NIS 853 authority document here, you can see inside of the authority document, again, like we talked about, we have the overview and the details tab. And inside of, like I said, inside of the authority documents, you have your citations. So I'm going to use another analogy here. So your authority document you can think of as the entire book, and your citations are your individual chapters in that book. So you can see it pulls out separate quote-unquote chapters that we call citations here inside of ServiceNow. And they put them in the authority document. And if we click on any of these citations, so we'll click on CP8 here, you can see that now we're at the citation level, and you can see that there's individual control objectives assigned to the citation. So if we open up this control objective, again, we just walk down another layer, and you can kind of follow the breadcrumbs up here on the tab of the workspace. You can see that here at the control objective level, you have that overview and details tab, and this is where you can assign a attestation to the control objective, where when an individual control is created from this control objective, a attestation will be sent out. And you can also tie those entity types that I was talking about earlier. So when you tie entity types to a control objective, a individual control will be created for every entity. So if I have an entity type of all computers at the San Antonio location, and inside of that entity type is like I just said, has every single computer at the San Antonio location, a individual control from this control objective will be created, and it will have its own individual life cycle. Here at the control objective level, you can also see how many other citations that this individual control objective is tied to. So you can see these are the individual citations, other citations that it's tied to in the authority document. You can relate other control objectives to this control objective. Controls, which we just talked about, these will be all those controls that were created based on the entity type that we add. You can tie different risk statements to this control objective, and you can tie policy exceptions and policies as well to this control objective. All right, I think that wraps up the compliance workspace. The next thing we are going to talk about is the risk management workspace. All right, so here on the risk management workspace, you can see it has a very similar layout to the compliance workspace, where you'll have this home tab where you'll have an overview, reports of risk management as a whole. You'll have your task pane over here on the right. I'll kind of scroll through a couple of these reports so you can see them. Again, these are all configurable to what your business desires and needs. One thing I did want to show was the heat map workbench here on the workspace. So you can see that this heat map here, we're looking at enterprise risk management, and we're looking at a heat map based on inherent risk. And you can see you'll have your heat map here, so I can click on any of these and it would take me to a list view of the ones that match the criteria, but you can also see all of them here over here on the right. There's a couple different heat map reports that we'll see, and I'll kind of show them a little bit later as well. One thing I did want to note here on the risk workspace was if we open up our list here, you can see again a very similar list view here where we have different pieces and parts of the pie of the risk management as a whole for ServiceNow. But if we open up the library and we can open up risk statements, you can see this is a list view of all the risk statements, and risk statements work very similarly to how control objectives work in the compliance workspace. So a risk statement is kind of your template risk. So you have transmission of security attributes here. You can see the framework that this risk statement is tied to, and you can see that this risk statement also has an assessment tied to it. So like I said, similar to compliance or control objectives on the compliance workspace, is you'll tie individual entities or groups of entities to this risk statement, and whenever we add those to this risk statement, individual risk will be created for them. And any of these values and fields you see here set on the risk statement will be mapped down to the individual risk. Obviously, you can change those on an individual basis, but this gives you a starting point. Everything I've been showing you right now has been inside of the risk workspace, but there's also the native view of ServiceNow. So if we go to my favorites tab here and we click on risk register and we open up risk statements, you can see a very similar list view of all the different risk statements that are inside of the system currently. And when we open up any of these risks, so I'm going to open up this third-party risk statement. You can see it's just a kind of a different layout, that's all, where you'll have your name, the description, those fields that we were setting, and you can see the entity types that we can tie to the risk statement here. All right, I think that wraps up the risk statement. The risk workspace. I am now going to walk you through the third-party and vendor risk workflows. All right, so for third-party risk management, we're here on the vendor management workspace. Again, if you go to workspaces, you'll see vendor management workspace here at the bottom. And here is where all of the third-party risk management takes place. I do want to put a note that third-party risk management is a scoped or separately licensed application that handles the lifecycle of third-party engagements inside of risk and compliance. But with that, I will show you the due diligence process. So due diligence process in ServiceNow is essentially the third-party risk management process. They just kind of rebranded it and called it due diligence. So in the lifecycle is kind of here across the top, but you can see here on the workspace, any of these kind of filters we click on up here will give us our list view of those. So you can see new request here. If I want to look at the ones that are inside of the due diligence process, you can see here. But I will quickly explain the life cycle here across the top. So a new request is when a new request is submitted, and that can be you onboarding a new vendor or renewing a contract with a vendor, or maybe just every year you're going to redo the process here to reassess the risk that the vendor has with the business. The IRQ process, the very first thing after you kind of fill out the initial information on the due diligence request, will be the inherent risk questionnaire. So this will be an internal questionnaire that we assign to someone on the risk and compliance team for them to fill out about the vendor. Those questions will have weights to them. So when those questions come back, it'll give you an inherent risk score. At that point is when you submit your questionnaires and your document requests to the third parties. So you will submit your questionnaires and your document requests to the third parties for them to fill out and to return back to you. Once they fill it out on the vendor portal, they will come back internally to you in this due diligence process, and that's where the due diligence process starts. So that's where you're reviewing the questionnaire and the document request. And again, that questionnaire that you send out to them is weighted, so you'll get a risk score from them based on their answers to those questions. One thing I did skip and I wanted to note was there is a communication process back and forth. So if they didn't provide the correct information or the correct documentation, you can send them notes, and that will in turn send them notifications on the portal for them to provide additional information. After that, there is an approval process, and that will take you to a final review process. So there's kind of two approval steps here. before it's closed out. All right, I am going to walk over to the audit management workspace now. All right, so here on the audit management workspace, you can see it looks very similar to the other ones that I've shown, where there's a home tab, a couple other tabs. You'll have your list tab, which we'll get to in just a second, and your task tab on your home page over here on the right. But I'm going to quickly kind of scroll through and kind of show you some of the overview reporting here on the audit management homepage. You can see engagement. So these are the individual audits that you create. ServiceNow calls them engagements inside the system. So you can see we have 46 total open engagements. See some other statistics there on them as well. Different audit tasks, different audit observations that are out there. Your open audits and engagements here at the bottom. All right, so if we go to the list view here, again, very similar to the other ones where you have different list of different records pertaining to the audit module. But if we are inside the execution module, you can see all engagements here. So I'm going to open up one of these engagements, and I'm going to kind of talk through the process here similarly to how I just did third-party risk management. So here on this engagement, you can see it's the Finance Department Review Q4. You can see that the overview, you can see the states here across the top, where the first state is scoping. So this is where we're kind of building out that engagement. I'll show you some of the fields here in just a minute. And we're tying our individual entities so that are part of this scope of this audit and onto the engagement record. This is where we're in the second state is validate and plan, where we're kind of setting out the plan and some general dates and guidelines of when we want everything to be completed by. Field work, this is where all the work is going to be done. This is where you're running your test plans and you're filling out and completing your audit task and all your evidence requests. There is an approval process at the end of that field work, so you'll go to an awaiting approval state. And then there's a follow-up state, and this state is kind of just to wrap up any open items, so any open audit task or any evidence requests that are still open or issues. And then there is a closing task there at the end when it's all said and done. So here on the overview tab of the engagement, you can see there's some, again, just some general reporting here. So you can see that status. You can see the different planned and actual start date times of the different sections of the engagement process. You can see some general detail, percentage of like how much of the field work is completed. Some tracking, so these are some of the audit tasks that are open, which ones are overdue, any issues that come up. And again, any of these reports you can click right into these. So I can click into these audit tasks. I can see these 13 audit tasks here. I'm going to go back, and then you do have the option to set up some milestones. So you can do set some milestones and set those up per engagement. All right, and I think that wraps it up. I'm going to take us back to some more general reporting for risk overview and show you how to schedule reports inside of ServiceNow. So that's what we'll get to next. All right, so for dashboarding and reporting, I'm going to go to my favorites here, and I'm going to open up the risk overview dashboard. And you can see as this comes up, you can see there's lots of different reports on here and lots of different tabs on here. So each of these tabs contain individual reports on them as well. And I'll kind of click through a couple of those. You can see there's lots of different types of reports. It just depends on what you as a business wants. And we can take any of these and kind of customize them and build them in accordance with what your KPI and what your metrics and what you want to track as a business. But for example, like I said earlier, this is just another heat map report. You can see risk by category, and you can see kind of single scores of the risk counts by inherent risk. So you can see we have 26 very high inherent risk, 166 risk with a high inherent risk, and so on and so forth. But we can build these dashboards and we can share these out with specific groups or individual users. And you can do that on a user level too. It doesn't take an admin to build out these reports. And that's something we'll do during kind of the training part of the project, where we'll kind of teach and train and show you how to build these and make them work for your business, so you guys can do them for yourself as well. And for the scheduling of the report, so any of these reports you can build and schedule them out, and I'll show that next. So if I open up my favorites tab here and I go to this scheduled report that I saved, you can see, so again, this is just a record of a scheduled report. At the top here, I named it. It's the high residual risk score on demand. This is the actual report record that I'm going to be sharing out. So this is where you would select that actual report. And then this is where you would select the users and or the groups that you want to send this to. So I could send this to all of the risk managers group like I have right now. And then I can also send these out on an individual level. So I can select individual users here if I wanted to send them out on an individual user level as well. You also have the option to type in email addresses. So if maybe the users that you're trying to send this report to are not users inside of the ServiceNow instance, that's all right. You can comma separate email addresses down here to send this report to them. Over here on the right, this is kind of the scheduling part of the scheduled report. You can say we want to send this daily, weekly, monthly. So for example, if you select weekly, you can select the day of the week you want to send it on. So you can send it on every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, etc. And then the time that you want to send this out at. You can do periodically, so you can do it every 12 hours, every 36 hours, and you can also send it out just once if you wanted it to. So you have a couple different options here. A neat feature that I like to show everyone is the omit if no records. So if there's no records that meet your report, so maybe you are, for example, required to send a report to executives for overdue audits, and you have that report built. If there's no records that meet that, or if there's no records that are on that report, meaning you don't have any overdue audits, then even though this is set up to run every week on Monday, for example, at 8 in the morning, if there's no records, then it's not going to send anything. So they're not going to get a blank report. So moving on. So here at the bottom, you can see you have, this is the subject of the email and the introductory or the body of the email before it actually attaches the report on there. You can select the type. So do you want to send this report as an Excel, a PDF, or a CSV? And then a couple different options down here based on the type that you select. All right, and I think that wraps up reporting. So the next thing I'm going to talk about is some of the technical and security features, and then we are going to hop quickly back into the slideshow and I will let you guys go. So I will see you over there. Alright, so for this example I actually hopped into another demo instance of ours, and I wanted to show you the SSO settings inside of ServiceNow. So if we type in SSO in the All Filter Navigator here, and we click on Identity Providers, you can see all the different identity providers, and a lot of these are kind of demo data, but we do have SSO configured on this instance. So when I open up the in-source identity provider, you can see all the different fields and information here, and these are all information we'll get from Microsoft Active Directory. So usually this will be like a 30 to 45 minute call with an Azure AD admin, where we're getting some of this information. We're setting it up both on the Azure side and here inside of ServiceNow. So that's where a lot of this information here at the top comes from. And then you can see we have a couple different options here. So for provisioning the user, we can auto provision the user, or we can update the user record upon each login. And then again, in the advanced tab here, it's just some more configuration settings. A lot of these will come as soon as you set up the integration. We do have a test connection where we'll test the connection. And like I said, usually this is about a 30 to 45 minute call with the Azure admin from the customer side, and we can set this up for you guys. Alright, I'm going to hop over to the slideshow real quick, and then I promise I'll let you go. Alright, so here back on the slide. So we just wrapped up the demo. The other thing I wanted to mention was the ServiceNow Vault. So this kind of goes into some of those technical and security features inside of ServiceNow. And this is a newer module offered by ServiceNow. You can see the different options that the ServiceNow Vault module provides, and we'll kind of talk about those here on the next slide. So inside of the Vault you have data privacy, platform encryption, code signing and circle of trust, and log export services. So data privacy allows you to kind of discover and scan your instance for specific information or fields, and it gives you the ability to classify and anonymize that information. So not just any user can see or read that information. Kind of similarly, platform encryption, it'll addresses the key customer need of how data is protected and shared in the cloud, and ensuring that data, so the specific forms, field, or information inside those fields is encrypted at rest, so only authorized users can see it. Code signing and circle of trust, this kind of goes more to the developer side. So this is ensuring that you have digital signatures on specific configuration data and scripts inside of the instance. And the circle of trust is ensures that only the code from verified sources is executed inside the instance. So again, it kind of reduces that risk of malicious code or unauthorized software. The log export service is a real-time integration that is simple to set up and maintain, and it leverages the Now Platform capability called Hermes. And there at the bottom of the slide, we do have a link to the product documentation for the Vault, and we'll be sending this slideshow over, so you do have that link, so you can take a little bit more look, or take another look at it and see if that's something you guys would like as a business. All right, so I think that wraps it up. I just want to thank you for bearing with me through this video, and I hope to be working with you guys soon. So thank you all again, and I hope you guys have a good rest of your day.